Hello, friends, and welcome to another edition of Transformational Astrology. And we're in the middle of this June month, which I was looking ahead and feeling like it was going to be a pretty bad Mercury retrograde. I think it does depend on the way the Mercury hits your chart, and it hits mine. And I've been really dealing with it. I don't want to go into all of the details, but they're the usual symptoms. And we wonder, sometimes what the upside of it is. And I believe that everything has its upside. I think the COVID reset, as I call it sometimes, this past year has been really dramatic in terms of everything kind of slowed down, stopped, fossil fuel slowed down for a while there. These are very important times because we really have to do a little self-reflection right now. Where are we headed with this 21st century? I think it's time to really take stock. And I think there's a few things going on trying to pick a direction. And I think we're all individually trying to pick a direction. And I think all of that really interrelates. The microcosm and the macrocosm. And each individual one of us is the micro. So without further ado, let's take a look at the chart because we've got a solar eclipse coming up, which is what we want to talk about. And should be able to see the chart now. And we're using, as usual, the natural house rather than the rising point, which on the East Coast turns out to be in the middle of Taurus. I'm sorry, we're on the West Coast. On the West Coast is the middle of Taurus. It would be different for the East Coast. And we're using, though, the natural houses from Aries, Taurus, Gemini, all around. And speaking of Gemini, here we are. So the solar eclipse at 19 degrees 47 minutes is so close to this Mercury position, less than a degree away. So this is so important. So here we have retrograde Mercury, started at 24 degrees, has gotten to 20 by the time of the solar eclipse, which does take place on Thursday. And then it will move beyond, of course. Now this is one peak moment of the retrograde. That is to say this day-long timing, from, let's say, the 10th to the 11th, something like that, when the sun and Mercury come together, but now we're also having not only the sun and Mercury coming together, but the sun and moon and Mercury coming together in the new moon, and it's also with the north node, making it a solar eclipse as well. So this is a very powerful new moon. We want to make a marker here. Normally we think of the new moon as a 30-day thing. It does color the rest of the month, the rest of the moon period, the lunation with the sun, when it catches up to the sun again, we call that the 30 days of the moon, of the new moon till the next new moon. And we will be dealing with a special one, they say, of course, with eclipses, they say 6 months, because basically it's until the next eclipse cycle comes along in December. So what we're looking at here really is a kind of an important configuration to pay attention to, and we've been paying attention, all of us, all this time. But now we have again, you can see it's actually a grand cross. If you can consider the position of Eris at 24 degrees of Aries, opposite Haumea. And this is something that a lot of astrologers don't pay attention to as yet because they don't realize that Eris is very important in natal charts and in transiting. And so is actually Haumea and Makemake, these new ones, which I call nature planets because they're named after indigenous gods and goddesses. They have to do with nature. Haumea is almost an emblem of nature. It was the creation goddess of Hawaii, where all of the fecundity of nature is expressed in the mythology around this person in that era, which isn't to say we have to go to Hawaii to understand this. Basically, that gives us a clue to the astrological meaning, which does seem to have to do with profound connection to nature. I've demonstrated that over and over again with different charts, and it has to do not only with profound connection to nature, as to be in nature, but also in terms of a natural way of being in the world that indigenous people were very familiar with, all of us are very familiar with, which takes us to the inside, where we can really understand there's a concept of natural law. There's right and wrong. There's right relationship, right action, what is the right thing to do, and it's expressed in all the religions of the world and various different ethical ways of putting it. You can call it the golden rule. You can say, do well to others because that's the way things should be and you want people to do well to you. And really it's just kindness. I I love the Grateful Dead. I'm a Grateful Dead fan. And it does go back, if you think about it, to that one line from Uncle John's Band, where it's kind of an iconic Grateful Dead theme about what are we doing here with this music that we're bringing. We're bringing music and a certain way of looking at life. And the line is, oh, what I want to know is, are you kind? And it just really sums it up. It's like we've got to be kind to each other. We've got to treat each other well. That includes all the creatures of the earth. So this is the message that these two planets are bringing. Maki is more of an activist stance on this same topic. I see it over and over again with people that do have strong activist credentials, such as Bill McKibben, who's a very well-known environmental activist, strong Maki. So I look for it in people's charts, and I do find it when I'm expecting to, as it relates. Greta Thunberg, great example, at the age of 15, spoke to the leaders of the world, addressed the UN, and said that they were screwing up. You're messing it up for the rest of us, for the generations to come. We have to start working on climate change. We have to start working on it right now. And that is kind of the sentiment a lot of people have, although it's mixed. There's also profits we can make from fossil fuel extraction, which is the other way of looking. So we have these issues going on. When I say Greta, she does have in her natal chart very strong position of Maki in actual partile inconjunct to Eris, in a yod to Eris with Mars, and Eris is also in a grand trine with Pluto and Jupiter. So it's very interesting to see her activism, her basic feminine warrior status, which she has, which is the Eris component, and then with Maki as well, with the activism for nature, for natural cause, for just being one with the earth, one with the environment that we have, recognizing that we're part of the earth. That's the only way we can be. So, excuse me. So to reiterate, this is a T-square that we've been seeing for a long time, active last summer when it did signal a really resurgence of COVID, of disease, and I'm not sure what we're seeing coming up because this is coming back. It's almost a partile. This is Haumea in perfect square to Pluto, with Mars opposite, with Eris also square Grand Cross. Not really tuned into the solar eclipse, except that if you look at the parallel with the Sun, contraparallel, the declinational aspects with the Sun are listed here, contraparallel to Pluto, and incidentally parallel to both the Moon and to Maki. So that's something to think about too, that Maki is kind of emphasized in this whole eclipse cycle, from the full moon that took place before the month began to this new moon that we're having now on June 10th. Bringing up Maki. Why do I say that? Because if you think about it, the full moon eclipse before the month of June began, which was at 5 degrees of Gemini and 5 degrees of Sagittarius, really lit up the 5-degree mark, also by sextile and by trine, in Libra, which is the Maki position, and now here we have the parallel. So I do believe that there's a strong Maki going on, that there's a strong push for environmental action. I know that there's preparations for the next Accords, which I think, I'm not sure where it's taking place, I forget, but there is new environmental action taking place. There's revival of the Paris Accords. There's talk about Green New Deal, Building Back Better is another thing that Biden says. And, a lot of people are in favor of this, spending the money, which creates jobs, by the way, which is a great stimulus for the economy, and making it green, making it renewable. It's pretty simple. It's just like what we need to do because of the greenhouse gas emission problem and the global warming issue for climate change. So I don't have to say any more about that. I think a lot of people know what that's about. It's just kind of a question of the political will, isn't it, to do it? So here we have this eclipse, and it does have the Mercury retrograde, and the question that I was up to a little bit ago was, what is the value of things like this COVID societal reset that we've been in for a year now, more than a year? What is the purpose of Mercury retrograde when we have so many kind of things going south, things not going the way we want, mechanical breakdowns, communication breakdowns, having to do it 3 times to get it right? Part of that is that we do benefit, let's put it that way, from taking a deeper look at our whole process. In other words, instead of just going through our regular track, take a look at what's happening. Investigate, be introspective. Think about what's behind everything. And I think that'll get us through. That's what the purpose of it is, that's what the value of this is, and we do want to recognize that. And then also recognizing that this Pluto situation does represent transformation. What is it that you are happy with, that's going well, and what is it about anything in your life, habitual patterns, reaction to childhood trauma, wounding? What is it that can be improved by letting something go? There is maybe something that needs to be let go in all of this time, which is the Grand Cross. So it is something to think about. It does involve Saturn as well. We have Saturn just very close to a perfect sextile to Uranus right now, and of course that's the biggest, I'm sorry, it's a square to Uranus. It's a sextile to Chiron and a square to Uranus. And so this is, because here's Chiron at 12 degrees, here's Saturn at 13 degrees, and here at 12 degrees 54 minutes, right between the two, is Uranus. So in this configuration, what is it implying? It's implying that we do have the structure, as indicated by Saturn, and the progressive notion, the way to get past the blockages, is indicated by Uranus. You know, Jeff Green called Uranus, the book he wrote was called Freedom from the Known, which is a great title for a book about Uranus. The idea that we can jump the tracks of the original conception. We can lay new train tracks, as Carolyn Casey says, for the reality to follow. You know, imagination lays the tracks for the reality to follow, and that's Uranus. So, yeah, I mean, thinking about also that the Chiron, you know, does come into it, and that is our old wounds. That is, in many cases, what chains us to a particular way of being and thinking. We don't advance beyond where we could. We don't go to that thing that we want to go to. Why not? Possibly because we do have this trauma that's kind of buried away that we're not dealing with. We have a tendency to look away from it. That's Chiron. We have a tendency to bury it, not think about it, because it's painful, because it's shameful, perhaps. But when we do take the effort to look into it and try to move beyond that blockage and keeping it pinned away from ourselves and open up to it and recognize that, yes, we have a flaw. We're not a perfect being. We have a broken part of ourselves. As Leonard Cohen says, that's where the light gets in, right? There's a crack in everything, he says. And that's where the light gets in. And when you let the light in, it does open up. And it does allow you to move beyond where you were stuck. So that's a very important part of this time. You know, when you have a chance to look inside, when you have a chance to really think about what you're up to and try to plan a little bit in a more holistic way, not only taking into account your outer world activities, but also what is going on the inside and how you can make a better match between your values, which is about Eris. Again, Eris is about coming to your deepest values and articulating those, standing up for those, and being the most authentic version of yourself that you can be, because you're tuning into those deeper principles. Well, you can't do that if you're pinned down by old wounds that are kind of keeping you inhibited in a certain way, and you can't move the way you need to move, you know, the way you need to breathe to be able to be free. So it's all about coming to who you really are, you know, just being the person that you are in the best version of yourself that you can muster, as that fits in with the society being the best society that it can be. And we do have a long way to go. You know, we have this deep division in our society, a lot of fear, a lot of people believing in certain attitudes that they're told, you know. There's a song in the old days, you've got to be carefully taught to hate and fear, you've got to be carefully taught. And that's what's going on. There's a lot of propaganda in the works. There's a lot of people believing one thing or another thing, depending on who's talking and what's being said and what are the real facts, what's the true. And we do see there is a very big square here between the eclipse degree and in Gemini, and then you see it almost the same degree, 23 degrees of Pisces is where Neptune lives in Pisces. And I think it's about to retrograde. The next station is June 25th. Yeah, so this month, Neptune retrogrades at that degree. So this is a strong Neptune in a strong new moon configuration that does have that square, about a 3-degree sort of square, a little bit more maybe, to Neptune, which does represent both idealism, retreat from reality, going into your own little world, and maybe that's a safe way to go, but also the fantasies that can be promoted by others upon us, so that we have a question mark. What's real? What's true? What is the real fact of the matter? And that is so much in the zeitgeist right now, as you all know. So much in the zeitgeist, so much in our individual psychology as well. So these are things we just have to be aware of and tune into, try to make sense of, and try to do the best we can with. I will point out one more aspect to Maki Maki, which is not easy to spot, and it's not listed here. I think maybe we have to change something in the preferences. So I'll go to the time passages preferences here. Aspect orbs for natal charts. Yeah, the biquintile was turned off for some reason, so now you can see it. From Uranus to Maki Maki, we have a very close biquintile. And if you look down there, you'll see it's within about a degree. You can see it in the status bar below the chart. I don't know how easily you can see that, but it's down here. So anyway, the fact that Uranus, which is part of this whole configuration, as I say, progressive notions laid against the conservative notions that are also rampant. We have to worry about, is it practical? So from our own standpoint, we have to choose between going too far too fast and holding back, and what's the balance. But that is also in a very close biquintile aspect, and you can see that if you wanted to just look at it without the computer. Biquintile is, a fifth of the 360-degree circle is 72 degrees, and biquintile is 144 degrees. Kind of a nice number, right? It's got a lot of 12s in it. And what we can do to see if there's a 144-degree aspect is 120 plus 24 is 144. 24 added to the 12 makes 36, which is 6 degrees of Gemini, and then you go 120 degrees and you're right there. So you can kind of see it when you look at it. Of course, what you can't see is the parallels, and what we do with that is we do have the right click. So you can right click and see that the sun in this solar eclipse does have parallel to the moon, contraparallel to Pluto, and pretty close parallel when you look at both of the positions. 23 to Maki Maki, that is. So 23 and 23.3. So this is a close parallel. And those are important. I don't know how many people use declinations, but I found many times when I can spot an archetype sometimes, you can just kind of see it and sense it, and then you look for it, you don't see it, but then you can find it in maybe some of these minor aspects like the biquintile, or you can find it in the parallels very, very often. So it is something to think about. So I think that's about all I wanted to say about this solar eclipse. I think it's really magical that we're doing this in the middle of the Mercury retrograde, and it's a very Mercury retrograde time. Even on the 22nd of June, when Mercury stations at 16 degrees, having moved back through 8 degrees from 24, 8 degrees back in Gemini, it will take a while to recover that lost zodiacal ground. The retrograde shadow lasts another couple of weeks. So really until the middle of the first week, around the 7th of July, it will get back to 24, which is where it started. And that's the whole cycle, to my way of thinking, really straightens out. In other words, the moment of the station in Mercury is really kind of one of the peak points of the retrograde cycle. It's standing still in the sky. So we don't want to just celebrate and say, 22nd, it's out of retrograde, because it's still recovering. So I think until the month is over, until the first week of July, really, we have this time of, they say, don't push the river, just let things happen, pay attention, witness, try to learn. It's good for research. It's not so good for starting new things. So good to keep that in mind and to try to stick to it as best you can. The great joke is, guy lost his house, FEMA came by, they said, okay, we've got a check for you. And he says, "Oh, I'm sorry, I can't sign anything." Why not? Well, Mercury's retrograde. So that's a joke about astrologers, that they sometimes get a little too caught up. You have to do what you have to do, and you have to go through your life. But be aware of the symbolism, be aware of what's happening in the sky. So let's transition back and close. And I just want to say thank you for your attention. Appreciate your being here with us. We do have a message. The message is that there's a spiritual component to this life, and it's shown in the planets, including these new ones. And the fact that the planets have meaning and the universe is talking back to us, I like to say it's just not possible in the current science. No, astrology just isn't possible. It really is not. But on the other hand, it is there. It works. So what do you do with that? You have to really face up to it. We live in a magical universe, and it's there for us. And the more we can dig in and kind of find our way through, I think the more we can keep our head up and not feel a victim of forces beyond our control. We realize that we do have the control because we have the power over our own lives to do what we will, to make something happen along the lines that we believe in. And then if we've done our best, we've done what we can do. And the resonance created by that one action, the holographic effect, the microcosm to the macrocosm, really does send out ripples of energy and goodwill, and it can make a difference. So you're all immensely powerful. We're all making a difference. And let's keep doing that. All right. Thanks for your attention. Nice talking. Bye.